Manchester United and Chelsea are cleared to the Champions League alongside Tottenham to the Europa League, as well as relegation battle is ended with the last game of the Premier League. Aston Villa survive and Bournemouth and Watford go down to the Championship. Welcome to a new episode of the Football Baron podcast. What a amazing turn of events that happened throughout the season. Just a crazy season overall, with the season being paused due to the coronavirus and then restart. You see some teams coming up, such as Manchester United, just poor start to the season, and then they just climb all the way up, and now they're third in the Premier League as it stands, or as it is ending as. And Aston Villa were looking very poor at the bottom of the league, and now they managed to get out of that relegation zone. And unfortunately for Bournemouth and Watford, they are, of course, out. Leicester City were looking like a strong team that were going to secure top four no matter what by the end of the season. But just some poor results, some injury problems, and just some poor decisions from some players just ultimately led to a fall in their team performance. And ultimately, they are, of course, going to be only getting Europa League football. Of course, Liverpool and Manchester City will hold first and second place, and just some crazy events and transfer news we got for you later in the podcast. But let's get started with that relegation battle that occurred. Weeks ago, we talked about which teams would be relegated from the Premier League, and now looking back on it, we're looking at the same teams, but in a different orientation than what we thought a couple of weeks ago. Now, I personally believe that what I would think was that Bournemouth and Norwich and, of course, West Ham will be relegated. I didn't think that Watford or Aston Villa would be relegated. And, of course, one of those teams, those two teams were the opposite. West Ham didn't get relegated, and, of course, Watford did. Now, this relegation battle that just took place was, I think it's a crazy ride. Relegation battles are always interesting and just really, really just crazy to follow. Now, I was hoping that Aston Villa, if I'm just transparency, let's be honest, I was hoping that Aston Villa would survive, and I didn't really mind for Watford for them being relegated, and to be honest, I think I kind of expected them to get relegated after they sacked Nigel Pearson, because that is such a fool, like, hardy just decision. What's the point? Just because he like talked bad to you, or there's reports that he just yelled or like cursed out the owner. I get that. Just sack him at the end, but we already talked about that a couple days ago in the last podcast. But just looking at it, looking at what Watford did, I think only the board can be the blame for what happened to their team. And of course, Aston Villa just versus West Ham, 1-1 scoreline. Jack Grealish with an amazing strike nearing the end of the game, and of course, it was helped with the goalkeeper error, and then a deflection just levels the scoreline, so makes it even more intense. And Watford could have scored more and potentially taken that with a heroic victory and stay in the Premier League. But Watford got pummeled by Arsenal in the first half, and I believe they did get a goal later on with Troy Deeney and then Welbeck, just putting them at 3-2, and they were looking like they were really putting in that effort to get back. And credit to Watford. Watford's players have been, I just want to say that Watford fans and players have gone through hell with what this board is doing and sacking managers. The Watford players is putting it all what they can do for the team. They're doing it. Troy Deeney, Ben Foster, just many of those other players who have been absolutely a solid rock. And of course, in the other game, Everton versus Bournemouth fighting heroically. They knew that if they just had to win and hope that Aston Villa and Watford lose. Unfortunately for them, Aston Villa didn't lose, so they couldn't stay in the Premier League. But they did put in a strong performance, really strong. And I do think, unfortunately for Bournemouth, some of their important players, specifically Dominic Solanke, that they expect to do well and really help them to stay in the Premier League, unfortunately turned up at the wrong time. They turned up way too late, and they just fell short, and that's primarily it. And 6 years, I believe, or 6 seasons in the Premier League are to an end, and now they're in the Championship. Now, looking at what the teams have experienced, I think that Aston Villa specifically have improved quite well defensively. They looked defensively solid in that West Ham game. West Ham were getting a lot of attacking play in there and really almost breaking through Aston Villa's defense. And of course, that deflection was just, I think it was just a silly and unfortunate mistake and unluck, just a lack of luck there, the way the deflection went. And of course, Pepe Reina couldn't fully respond. But still, Aston Villa, with some of the signings that they brought in, I think that it kind of strengthened the squad, but it also weakened it because they didn't really have, let's say, throughout the season, really a striker that they could rely on. And players like Jack Grealish and Trezeguet, and they picked up the pace, and Trezeguet specifically picking up the pace ever since the restart. And Douglas Luiz also, I was looking at the comments on our YouTube channel, and someone said that Douglas Luiz was a strong player, and thinking more on it, of course he was. I mean, even in this game, he was really, I could see him really encouraging and dictating the way the passing play. There's the defense just being quite too hesitant in the passing and too cautious, and Douglas Luiz was urging them on in the game. But overall, those Aston Villa players is putting in that strong performance to, of course, stay in that Premier League. Overall, relegation battle was an interesting one, and there's nothing better than, for a neutral, a relegation battle where it is at the last Premier League game day, and each team, Bournemouth, Watford, and Aston Villa, could have taken a result from this, depending on the circumstances that they were in. But overall, just an amazing relegation battle to witness. And sadly for Watford and Bournemouth fans, they will be going to the Championship. But hopefully they will come back. And overall, just a great relegation battle. Champions League qualification, another focal point of the last Premier League match day for this season. Let's see here. Chelsea versus Wolves, Leicester City versus Manchester United. Those two games determining who will be in the Champions League next season. Manchester City and Liverpool already confirmed that they were going to be in the Champions League, and Manchester City, of course, getting their ban lifted, so meaning that fifth place wouldn't count as a Champions League spot. And Leicester City versus Manchester United. A penalty is conceded with Johnny Evans and Wes Morgans, I believe, conceding that penalty. They're both trying to get in and stop the ball, try to get in a tackle and take the ball from the attacking player. And they didn't reach the ball, and they got a yellow card, and they conceded the penalty. And Bruno Fernandes delivered, and he's just been in amazing form. And they go 1-0 up. And then Johnny Evans does another tackle. He was already yellow carded from that penalty, I believe. And then he had his studs up, and ultimately it hit a Manchester United player, and that was just too dangerous to call, and ultimately a red card for him. And Leicester City's down 10 men. And then I believe in the 96th minute, Lingard steals the ball from Schmeichel and puts that 2-0. If I'm going to be honest, Leicester City, I didn't really expect them to win. If they did win, I think it'd be a surprise. Either they put in a strong performance as a team, or Manchester United just slipped up that game. But Manchester United won. Not really that big. It was a big game, but not really, if I'm being honest, a memorable game. But overall, Manchester United just solid in getting that win. And if they didn't win, I think it'd be very, very disappointing, because that Leicester City side is weakened as hell. Sayuncu out because of that red card that he received at Bournemouth, and some of their key players just injured. And the fact that if they didn't win, and which they did, would be very disappointing for United fans. But good for United. They were in a poor position in the earlier parts of the season, and they just climbed their way up, and ultimately a third position in the Premier League is very reputable, and what you expect from Manchester United as a team. While Chelsea versus Wolves. Wolves, of course, is trying to get points to get Europa League qualification. They were, of course, chasing Champions League earlier this season, but slowly slipped up with a couple of results. And Chelsea were trying to maintain that Champions League spot that they had, and ultimately they did. They broke the scoreline, which was at 0-0, prior to the end of first half, with Mason Mount getting a free kick. Lovely free kick, by the way. Really, really nice technique. And Mason Mount has been doing really well this season. And then Giroud, nearing a minute, I believe, left in that first half, and he scores a goal. And Chelsea, and that'll be the scoreline for the rest of the game. Chelsea 2-0 versus Wolves. And Chelsea and Manchester United will be getting top four Champions League football next season, and will be playing in the Champions League. Something you expect from these teams. And Chelsea, prior to the season starting, I didn't really expect it. I didn't really expect them to win top four, and I don't think many Chelsea fans did either because of the circumstances that Frank Lampard was in. Transfer ban, lack of players that they could bring in because of that transfer ban, Eden Hazard leaving, and they relied on a lot of youth players such as Abraham and Hudson-Odoi and Mount and just all these younger players who don't have as much experience, and it worked out. And I think those expectations rose, and I think that's what put the pressure on Frank Lampard. I don't think he had that much pressure earlier in the season because, of course, it was his first season in the Premier League, and he didn't really have that much pressure because of the circumstances he was in. But now with the transfer ban lifted and their strong performance and strong start with the players that they had, the youth players, the young players, those expectations rose, and that pressure did as well for him to get top four. And he did meet it, and Leicester City will be unfortunate. Brendan Rodgers will be, of course, disappointed in not getting that top four with an amazing start to the season. Jose Mourinho was celebrating at the end of the Tottenham Hotspurs versus Crystal Palace game. Spurs 1-1 scoreline against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace just very poor after the restart, and they're not going to make it. I believe 7 defeats back to back. They made it 6 with that draw against Spurs that just occurred. Just good for Palace, I guess, in not getting another defeat. Hopefully they don't show that same form next season. I hope they don't. And just they were really poor after the restart. Let's be honest, just very, very poor. And they were also unlucky, especially against that Chelsea game. But of course, Spurs 1-1 scoreline. Spurs won to draw, and with Wolves, going down 2-0. Spurs got that 6th place, and that means that they will get Europa League football. And Jose Mourinho was celebrating with his staff after the game with them securing Europa League football. Harry Kane scoring a goal. Harry Kane just coming back after that injury that he was facing, the major injury, and just getting those building blocks back in place in terms of fitness and just getting that goal-scoring habit that he has going again. And he already has it going, and he ends the last game of the Premier League in another goal for his team. Chelsea, in the last game of the Premier League this season, dropped Kepa for Caballero, and I think it's expected, or should be expected, with his poor performances, as well as the defenses being poor as well. But overall, Jan Oblak has been Chelsea has been reported to be interested. I think Chelsea do want a goalkeeper. I think many at Chelsea have lost. A lot of fans as well have lost that faith in Kepa. Kepa was a very expensive signing for Chelsea, and he was expected to. He was a young goalkeeper coming in, and he was expected to be a top class, world class goalkeeper for Chelsea, and he hasn't really lived up to that expectations really. And Chelsea, they're looking for a new goalkeeper, and I heard reports that Chelsea were looking to sign Jan Oblak as well, and just other goalkeepers. They're just looking for a goalkeeper, and there's also Andre Onana from Ajax they could look for, but it's going to be very, 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 very tough for Chelsea. It's just not looking good for Chelsea's future in terms of the goalkeeper position, unless they just break the bank. They just break the bank like they did with Kepa. But of course, the coronavirus they might be more wary or cautious. But then again, Abramovich will be willing to do what he wants with that money. But Jan Oblak, I heard reports that they're gonna have to meet his release clause, and I believe that's like 100 million plus. I think it's like 130 or 110. Just a whole lot of transfer money, and if they do, I think that's gonna be very surprising, and I don't think it's gonna be a smart economic decision, I guess, because of the coronavirus just making the transfer market not that healthy and like not that suitable in terms of like getting players, and just Chelsea, they're really gonna need to break the bank for players, for another goalkeeper, if they are going to be looking to challenge the title next season. I think that just Jan Oblak, Andre Onana. There's all these options that they have if they want to break the bank, and I just don't see Kepa really recovering. Now, I'm disappointed with Kepa's performances, and I'm sure like a lot of others. And there's some people who hate him for his performances. I think that's a little bit too far for a player. Of course, we need to be hesitant in terms of this being that cruel. I guess some fans need to also not be that cruel. But Kepa, just mentally, psychologically, I think it's going to be very, very hard, and I don't see him recovering to become that top class, world class goalkeeper that you expect from that many people expected from him, because of all the the harsh treatment in terms of from the fans and of course critics and analysts and pundits and all that, just that harsh criticism. I think that'll just break his confidence, and it has broken his confidence, and I don't see him recovering from that. Ozan Kabak, Schalke's defender, has gotten interest from Liverpool as a replacement for Dejan Lovren. Of course, Lovren, after winning the Premier League, is looking to be moving on to potential clubs such as Zenit from the Russian Premier League. And with Lovren leaving, of course, they're looking for a replacement. They don't want to spend too much, and I think they're targeting Schalke because, of course, Schalke has some money issues, and Schalke is unloading or potentially unloading a lot of their talent in order to raise up some cash. And one of those is Ozan Kabak potentially. Of course, Kabak has a exit clause for next summer specifically for 45 million euros, but Schalke are willing to not use that exit clause next summer and instead willing to sell him for in the region of 35 million euros. And Kabak, looking at him in the Bundesliga for Schalke, was really poor the last season, the season that just ended of the Bundesliga. And Kabak, among some other players, were looking very strong for a Schalke side that was looking very, very weak. And he's a really solid defender. Just his timing in as a defender is really good for his age. 20 years old. He just turned 20 recently, 3 months ago or 4 months ago. And Kabak is also just strong physically, 6'1", and really good in the air. And there's reports I saw from Bundesliga.com, the Bundesliga official website, how he admires and is inspired or motivated by Virgil van Dijk, and I think that could be a strong pairing. Of course, Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez are a strong pairing, and I think that Kabak could be a strong addition to that defense. And if Liverpool are going to be looking to maintain a Premier League title, I think adding that depth to the defensive center back role, because I think that Joel Matip is a good, solid defender, as well as Joe Gomez. Dejan Lovren, I'm gonna be honest, he makes some silly mistakes that just really are unnecessary for a Champions team such as Liverpool, and I think that Kabak could be that player because, of course, he is described and by his former team Stuttgart and David Wagner, the Schalke head coach, as a calm, strong, stable defender, and I think that Kabak could provide that for the Premier League. And of course, he will need some time to get it used to because, of course, transitioning from the Bundesliga to the Premier League is going to be a tough challenge for him. But still, looking at what he has experience-wise in the Bundesliga is quite impressive. 26 appearances for Schalke the season that just ended for Schalke, 3 goals and 1 assist as well. And he played for Stuttgart prior to that, in terms helping them just try to avoid relegation. Unfortunately, they ultimately did get relegated, and then he moved on to Schalke. But I think he's looking like a strong future defender, and I see that I see those Turkish players slowly coming through the Bundesliga, because they're not getting those chances in the Turkish league, and I think Kabak is looking like one of those players from Turkey who is going to be a strong and great player in the future as a central defender, and of course interest from Liverpool. And with the last game of the Premier League, just something to know, of course, is Kevin De Bruyne getting assist in that 5-0 win against Norwich. And in that 5-0 win against Norwich, you know what happened. Or those of you who didn't know what happened, 20 assists for Kevin De Bruyne this season. Absolutely incredible. Just absolutely incredible from Kevin De Bruyne. Just absolute amazing player. I just admire how he plays. He's absolutely just I can't running out superlatives for him. Just absolutely incredible. Just looking at his stats and his just how he plays for Manchester City. Of course, Manchester City does play heavily to him, but what he does for Manchester City is amazing. And now he's tied with 20 assists in the Premier League this season. He's tied with Thierry Henry for the most assists in a season, the record. And just looking 13 goals and 20 assists as a attacking central midfielder and attacking midfielder, just quite impressive. And just another reason that I'm disappointed and absolutely disgusted why the Ballon d'Or was canceled, because alongside Robert Lewandowski, he deserved the Ballon d'Or compared to Messi and Ronaldo or other players that were in contention. But what he's doing, and still he's 29 years old, and I think we got at least two, three, four. I think 3-4 more seasons left of him being a top class player. And if Guardiola stays, I think that De Bruyne will continue to shine. And that I'm sure, and hopefully, maybe for him, he can break that record of Thierry Henry and get that 21 assists. I think he did get 20 assists a couple games ago, but they like chalked off a couple because there was like little mini deflections, which is kind of stupid. But I guess it is the rules. But still, Kevin De Bruyne, solid from him. 20 assists this season, 13 goals as well, tying up the record for most assists in a season in the Premier League with Thierry Henry. Unfortunately, did not manage to break it, but he is tied up as alongside one of the legendary figures in the Premier League. Moving on to our Wonderkid to Watch segment, where we talk about a young player with a lot of potential for the future, the potential to become a top-class player, and of course, a player that we just look to as one of those world-class players that are just dominating and one of the key players in the league and for their team. And one of those wonder kids is Bukayo Saka for Arsenal Football Club, an academy product for Arsenal, and what he's been doing this season especially. He got a start last season, prior to this season, because when he turned 17 under Unai Emery, but now he's been starting 50% of Arsenal's game in the Premier League, and 51% of those minutes in the Premier League. 26 appearances for Arsenal, and 1 goal and 5 assists this season for Arsenal. Of course, he is young. He's 18 years old. I just want to highlight that. And he's been doing quite well for Arsenal, especially under Arteta, specifically because Arteta has been experimenting with him as a player, specifically how he plays on the left wing. He's been usually played as a left winger, but Arteta has been experimenting with him and putting him on left back, which is interesting because, of course, they have had some injuries at Arsenal, specifically with Kieran Tierney, for example, him not being available in that left back position. But with Bukayo Saka and, of course, Mikel Arteta, you are seeing an experimentation with how he can develop Saka into a top-class player. And I think that Saka has that potential to be a top-class player. And, of course, there's some of the more senior players, such as Aubameyang, are showing that they really like him because he has that strong personality in terms of he's determined to learn and do what's best. And of course, Arteta was talking about how he's adapting him to be a left back, and he said he's learning to adapt and to sacrifice for the team. If you're moved to say, okay, now if I do not play good, I have the right excuse because this is not my position. but he's the complete opposite. He tries to learn and tries to pick up things straight away and tries to be more productive for the team. He has done it really, really well. Now, that type of mentality is what you need if you want to fulfill your potential. If you are a talented player, there's so many talented players, talented products from the academies and from other academies, but they never fulfill that potential because they don't have the right mentality. And you can look at players like Jordan Henderson. Jordan Henderson isn't the most talented player in the world, but he's determined to play well. And I think that Saka is showing that, and he has that talent. And what you're seeing from him is growing overall stronger play, and he's slowly getting better in terms of just coordinating with the team, and he's I'm sure learning from the more experienced players such as Lacazette and Aubameyang when it comes to the attacking play, as well as when he breaks in and crosses in for Aubameyang or Lacazette. And I think that what we're seeing from Saka is quite incredible in terms of how Arteta experimenting with him and helping him, I think, figure out and decide what position is the best for him. I don't think he will be a left back, though, because, of course, Kieran Tierney is looking stronger as a left back, and he hasn't really faced any injury problems anymore. And hopefully he will stay healthy and fit. And I think that if Tierney stays fit, I think that Saka will be staying on that left wing. And Saka's looking really good for Arsenal. And Arsenal just slowly on the bounce back with Arteta. I think that Saka will be showing that determination and that personality, like players such as Aubameyang potentially, and of course Tierney, and those players just showing that motivation and commitment to really change Arsenal and change the bad luck of misfortune they've had in the past couple of seasons. That will be it for this episode of the Football Baron podcast. A little bit longer, of course, because this is the last match of the Premier League. Of course, in the next podcast, we're going to be talking about some of the games that are coming up, specifically in the Europa League and the Champions League. And then we'll do some little mini segments of season review of what's gone over in the Premier League. And we're just going to have some coverage of the Europa League and Champions League. But thank you all for listening. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or Spotify, please like the podcast or follow the podcast or rate it 5 stars, whatever it is on that specific platform, and just really help us out in terms of reaching more people and just that support if you are willing to. And of course, if you would like to go on our YouTube channel, or if you're listening on YouTube, please hit the like button and subscribe. And if you aren't listening on YouTube, go check out our YouTube channel, Football Baron, and you can like the video and subscribe to us to listen to some of our podcasts. Then thank you again for everyone listening, and I hope your teams weren't relegated, or if they were, I'm sorry. And if your team fell short, I'm sorry as well. But always next season, and I wish you all a good rest of your day. Have a great day. Bye.